Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. Today I am going to be sharing with you my January 2022 artisan project. In January, they asked me to use the Love and Happiness bundle. It comes with the stamp set, and this is just a really great stamp set. It's got some perfect greetings for all those special occasions. And then it also comes with the Bouquet of Love dies and the Bouquet of Love 3D embossing folder. And they come together because you can use the dies in the folder and cut out this center heart here. And we're going to be using those products today to create these really beautiful cards. They're perfect cards for weddings, engagements, anniversaries, those types of things. I love this one. This one makes me think of a bride and groom with those two colors. They're just very classic and beautiful cards to make. So I'll be sharing some fun techniques on how I created these cards in this video. If you are new to my channel and want to see more of my videos, click on the subscribe button and then the bell for notifications. I would love to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and help you with any of your paper crafting needs. To purchase any of the products you see me use today, please visit my online store, and the link is in the description below. So let's go ahead and get started making these cards. Let's begin with this beautiful card today. The technique I want to share with you for this card is how you can get this fun greeting stamped multiple times to create a texture for the background. The stamp set that I used for this one is Happy Wedding Day, but it would be the same technique for any of the greetings in this stamp set. So to do this easy, you're going to use your Stamparatus, and you're going to place your stamp on the clear plate, and then we need to just do a quick test stamp to see if it's stamping straight. So it's nice to have the grid paper underneath so that you can see if it's stamping. I'm using Versamark ink today. I'm hoping I can see it on this grid paper. Let's check and see. All right, so I can see it. It's probably not quite straight. The happy down here is a little bit lower than I'm stamping day. And so to fix that, I'm going to just lift it up, keeping day in place, and then just try to bring it up just a little bit higher. All right, I'm going to try stamping that one more time. I don't know if I'm going to see it this time because of the double Versamark. I think it maybe came up just a little higher. And if I notice that it's a little low, I can always adjust my paper as I'm cutting. So it's really important that you do start with a piece of paper that's larger than you want your finished product to be. So this piece is, it looks like it's just under the size of my card front. So a size that's a card front would be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And it's going to get added to the top of our Stamparatus and all the way to that left guide right there. I'm going to add my magnets and a little bit of embossing buddy just to remove any sticky areas or fingerprints. And then I'm going to go ahead and start stamping. So I'm going to use Versamark, and I'm going to stamp 4 of these wedding days, or maybe 5, as I move down my cardstock. So this is one of the things that Stamparatus is unique. It is different because it has this movable hinge here, and each of these placements are 1 inch apart. So it makes stamping images repeatedly very easy. So you just keep stamping all the way down your cardstock. I just have one more to do. All right. So before we move our paper, I'm going to go ahead and add my embossing powder to these stamped images. I can use a brush to get off any powder that might be sticking to my cardstock. And then I am going to heat this up with my heat tool. All right, so you know those are ready when they are melted and gotten shiny. So now we're going to add this back to our stamparatus. This time we're going to place it at the 1/4 inch mark. Add our magnets. And then you may want to add a little powder again. And then we're just going to stamp exactly the same way. You're going to start at the top. And what this is going to do is it's going to add a second greeting above the one we just did. And then I just continue to repeat this process all the way down my cardstock. Add the embossing powder just like before. Tap off any excess and then heat that until shiny. Okay, so you now have 2. So I'm sure you can figure out what we're going to do next. We're moving it down another 1/4 inch. So now we're at 1/2 inch. Make sure it's lined up with the left side. I'm going to add embossing powder this time to that whole piece. I had a lot of powder. I'm adding embossing buddy. I had a lot of embossing powder stuck to the cardstock after I did that last set. So I want to make sure that I remove any extra sticky areas. And then we just continue and repeat. So if you're getting a lot of static from heating, then you're going to see I've got a lot of powder here in the back. Just try to wipe that off. It's also happening to me on the front as well. So just add, so you can see it's still on there. So the best way I've found to get this off is actually to blow on it. So I'm going to do that behind me. And then it really just, it comes off much easier. There's a couple spots here that I'm just going to remove. Then I can heat this up. So if you're experiencing that same issue, then that's how you can remove that excess, is just do as much as you can to tap off, and then blowing on it kind of removes it all. So after doing that 3rd set, I've been noticing I'm getting a lot of powder that is sticking to my paper, even though I'm using the embossing buddy. And I think what's happening is there's some static happening within while I'm heating it up, that there's energy, electricity, something's going through the paper and really holding on to that powder. So I'm going to try another technique that you can do, and that is by using a dryer sheet. And so I'm just going to go ahead and add that all over my cardstock. I'm hoping that it's going to remove some of that static. And I'm going to do it from the back and the front because I was noticing it was happening to the back as well. It was really interesting. It was kind of clumping up in the same areas as where I had stamped. And so I'm just going to give you a little tip on another option here if you don't have an embossing buddy. And I'm hoping this will work. So I've covered that pretty well with a brand new dryer sheet there. I might actually just double it up and add a lot of powder here. Can't hurt. Okay, so back to my stamping. So I brought it down to 3/4 of an inch, and now I'll just continue to stamp each one of these sections as we come down the stamparatus. I'm also going to try something different when applying the powder so that it's not going all over. I'm going to scoop it up with a piece of cardstock and just apply it to the top. instead of scooping it up and getting it on the back as well. Okay, so that seems to have worked. I've gotten a lot clearer image here, and I don't have any on the back. There are a couple spots where I've overstamped, so I'm just going to go ahead, clean those up with my brush, and then I'm going to heat that up. Okay, so now we have this really beautiful pattern saying Happy Wedding Day going all the way down our basic white cardstock. And so now we're going to trim this to size. I'm going to cut it so that it is right along the outside of the whole greeting. And so to do that, I'm just going to take my paper trimmer and line up the Ys right along my trim guide here. So I just want to see a little bit of that Y peeking through on that side, all the way down. Okay, so you can see there how I've cut it, and then I'll rotate it and do the same for the H's. So I'm actually not lining it up to the top of my paper trimmer. It's just, I'm lining it up to the vertical line here. Okay, so now this piece is going to be just around 2 1/4 inches, maybe just shy. I'm going to trim this one here at the top just a little bit, so it feels like it has come from a larger piece of that repetition. And then the bottom down here, I'm going to trim to 5 1/4 inches. Just like that. So this piece is now ready for our card. So along with that piece that we just made, we're going to cut a piece from this black and white pattern paper. This paper comes from the Simply Elegant Designer Series paper. It is a specialty paper, and I'm just going to kind of show you some of the patterns that come in the kit. It's 12 by 12 paper. One side gives you these beautiful foils, and then the other side are some really beautiful patterns. I obviously am using that black and white pattern we just saw. This one's really pretty too. I love that these can be both feminine and masculine, these patterns. Love the shine as well. So pretty. Okay, so those, you get 12 sheets in each pack, and so you get 2 of each paper. So I'm using that black and white pattern, and then that complements that wedding day really nicely, so that's going to go on my card. I've also used the dies to cut out a heart from the pattern as well. So it was that first pattern you saw with kind of the scrolls on that white paper, and the dies do come from that Bouquet of Love dies. And so it's the same heart, and what you do is you just place it over the pattern so that you get these nice scrolls, and they are symmetrical on both sides. And so it really can be anywhere on that pattern, but you do want symmetrical images within that heart. So you're just going to cut that out. So that's how I got that one. I have already stamped my greeting in Versamark and then heat embossed that with white embossing powder. And then I am going to cut out some of these flowers that also are part of that die set. So again, this is the Bouquet of Love. I'm cutting them from some gold foil paper, and I'll just run that through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Be right back. All right, so I love when they give us multiples of the same die in a stamp set or a die set, because then I can just run it through really quickly when I need multiples, and I don't have to sit there and cut over and over and over. So I love that. So we'll just put those off to the side and make those in a minute. I do want to mention that there is a piece of vellum back here that kind of holds everything into, kind of grounds it. And I did do a fun shape on the top and bottom, and this is called a partial die cut. So that's when you use a die and you don't cut the whole shape of the die. So I just wanted to share with you how I did that. So my piece of vellum is 2 3/4 by 4 1/4 inches. Okay, so I'm going to take my die and I'm going to add it so that it sits right at the bottom of the vellum. So you can see here that this edge is meeting with the vellum edge. And then the edges of the die, so the ones on the sides, meet up with the sides of the vellum. Okay. So I'm going to use a little washi tape and hold it in place right where I want it. So it's going to look something like this. And so then when I place it on my plates, I want to place the top plate over the area I want cut. And I only want this bottom area here cut, not the top, because I want a nice full piece. So I'm going to go ahead and run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine just like that. So you can see here that it removes just that little piece off the bottom. And then I'm going to just repeat on the other side. So it needs to touch the edge, be centered, and the sides should touch the sides. And then you're going to layer it so that the top plate only covers the area you want cut. And again, this is called a partial die cut. So once you've cut the top and bottom, you can just look and see if any areas need to be rounded just a little bit more, because the die is just a hair smaller than that 2 3/4 inch width. So you can just round that out so that it looks nice. And then you've got this fun shape for the center of your card. So now that we have all the pieces, let's go ahead and put it together. So I'm going to start with a card base, and this is a smoky slate card stock, and it's been cut in half so that your dimensions are 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and then scored at 4 1/4. And so what I'm doing is I'm adding this 2-inch piece. This is actually 2 1/4 inches, and I'm adding it to the card front, and I want 1/4 of an inch along the right edge and the top edge, and I want it to sit at the bottom here. Okay, so again, that's 2 1/4 by 5 1/4, which is the same, about the same as this piece here. So now I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of this one, and I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to turn it all upside down because it's easier for me to work upside down. And I'm going to line it up with the 1/4 of an inch on my grid paper, and then bring that straight all the way down so that I have the 1/4 of an inch border on the left and then at the bottom here. And I think that just looks so pretty. Okay, so now we're going to work on the center elements. So we can go ahead and add this vellum directly to the center of our card. We know that this area here in the center is going to be covered. So just go ahead and add some adhesive there. Eyeball kind of the center. And you can use the pattern on that paper there to kind of make sure everything's nice and straight. I'm going to adhere this heart with some dimensionals. And that's actually going to go off center over the white area. Then I'm going to add my greeting, and I'll place a dimensional on each end for support. And then if I wanted, I could add a little adhesive in the center. And this is going to go at the bottom. And this is centered actually on the card. I think that looks better. And that says, "A wonderful marriage is the collection of many small happy moments." And that is another greeting that's in the Love and Happiness stamp set. So this is kind of pulling a little bit. So I'm going to add a glue dot underneath that greeting right there. So just find your next one. And then you can use your Take a Pick tool and just slide it underneath that greeting, and that's going to hold that down right there. Where did it go? Oh, right there. Okay. Perfect. So next we're going to work on these flowers, and I wanted them to have a little bit of dimension to them. So I'm going to take the stylus from the Take a Pick tool. So this is another little part that it comes with. And on a soft surface, kind of like this foam mat, and the large stylus, I'm going to rub each one of these petals, and that's going to pull that foil sheet up a little bit to create this really pretty three-dimensional flower here. And then I'm going to do the same with the small one. And you could use the small stylus if that works better for this small flower for you. And then I'm going to take a glue dot and put it on the back of the small flower. I think I'll use my Take a Pick tool to pull, that one kind of flew away, to pull that off. And that's going to go between the large and the small. Just like that. So then when you put those together, you get this really pretty three-dimensional flower here. Okay, so that's going to go on our card, and I'm going to repeat for this second flower here. So I can add these with another glue dot. Just going to place it down here. I think I'm going to use my stylus to press it all together. Make sure it's all nice and adhered, so my finger doesn't flatten out that pretty flower. Perfect. So find my next glue dot. This one I'm going to add a little bit higher near the greeting and on the heart. Again, use that stylus to push it all down and make sure that it sticks without flattening your flower. Okay, so you'll get something that looks like that. And then we're going to add some of these gilded gems to the center of the flowers and then just around the card. So the center of the flowers have either the large or the medium. The large is a little bit on the big side, so let's use the medium. It's going to cover up that hole that is cut with the dies. So that's a good size there. And then you can add some of the smaller ones around your card. So you'll get something that looks like that. And that card is all done. So let's go ahead and move over to card number 2, where I can share with you a couple fun tips on using the embossing folder with the dies and then getting this gold detail on the heart in the center. So one thing that I love about Stampin' Up! Products is that they coordinate so well together. So with the Bouquet of Love, you're going to have the heart from the Bouquet of Love dies. So you got your Bouquet of Love embossing folder, and this heart fits inside the embossing folder. So the side that has the Stampin' Up! Label is the front. And so that's where you're going to lay the die. So you can see that the cutting blade is on the top. So if you have the front of the embossing folder open and laying down, you've got your cutting blade is lifted up so that it can cut your paper, which you're now going to add over that heart. Okay. And then you can close it on that. So you do want to just make sure that everything is nice and even. So you can do that with a ruler. So right here, I've got the edge of the heart is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eighths from that side. And here it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just a little bit bigger on that side. So I'm just going to lift it up and maybe readjust slightly. It also felt a little bit tilted. So try that again. I think that's probably more centered right there. Still 5/8. That's a little bigger. Well, yeah, that's about 5/8, but it also feels like it's more straight on the card. Okay, so the piece that I am embossing here is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, so just a little bit smaller than a card base. And so when you're running this through your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, you need to do it just a little different than normal. So when you look at your platform number 1, it gives you how to do it. So when you're using a 3D embossing folder, you use just the platform, so number 1, and then number 4, which is the gray platform. You do not need number 2 or the clear plates. You do want to also make sure that when you run it through that your binding goes into the center of the embossing folder first, so that everything, so that things don't actually accidentally get caught and then you like break your folder. So I'm going to go ahead and place this through the machine and I'll be right back. So then when you open this, you're going to have embossed and cut your cardstock at the same time. Now, yes, you don't have to have the die in here. You can run it through your embossing folder and get this beautiful heart with this outline on the outside. It's not going to have the stitching because the stitching comes from the die, but you would have this outline of a heart inside your embossed paper. And there is a little bit of a cut line on the opposite side here. So just so you know, but it doesn't ruin your embossing folder at all. So that's how you use the embossing folder with the coordinating dies. So let's go ahead and move on to the gold detailing for this center heart. So you're going to need a silicone craft sheet. You could probably also use like a paper plate or something. And then I do have a sponge dauber that I have labeled with glue, so I know that that's what's been on the top here. When I'm done using it, I will wash it with some water, just some warm water, and just kind of squeeze it, dab it back and forth until it kind of runs clear, and then you can continue to reuse this. You don't want it to dry before you're able to wash it. So you're going to dab and get some glue, just some light glue on the top of your dauber, and then you lightly rub that glue back and forth over the raised areas. And what we're doing here is we're just creating a sticky surface for the gold leafing to adhere to. I'm going to get a little more adhesive and do it on the other side as well. So I'm using very light pressure here, making sure I kind of cover all of that raised area. Now, of course, there's the chance that I could be also getting some glue along the outside, and that's okay. So you want this to dry for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and clean this with a little water, and I'll be right back. So after you've cleaned it, you do want to make sure that that sponge, that you remove as much liquid as you can. So with the towel, just dab it until all that water is out so that it can air dry quickly. So now that that glue has dried and is tacky, because we're using this multi-purpose glue, so it is it adheres when it's wet and then it stays tacky when it's dry. And so that's why we're letting it dry. And I always keep my gold leafing in a little Tupperware like this. And then I have it here in the jar. So this is the original packaging. So I'm going to go ahead and add that gold leafing to the top. And then I can take my sponge and kind of rub that over. So that's going to remove any that doesn't stick to the areas where the glue is. Just kind of apply a little bit at a time and then rub some more off. Let's see if I can get any more to stick. Okay. So you'll get something like this. Now you'll notice that it's not perfectly covered all over. And that's okay. You're going to have a different effect each time you do it, depending on how much glue you've added. All right, so this is going to go on a card base of thick basic white cardstock. And it's the same size as before, 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and add my embossed cardstock to the front. I'm using liquid adhesive. I like to use glue when I am adding embossed cardstocks together because it gets into those cracks and really makes a nice bond. So that's just going to go right there on the front. I'm going to open it up to smooth out that liquid glue there. And then to cover up this opening, I have cut 2 circles. The basic black is in scallop, and then this is the smoky slate, and they're going to just overlap one another. You can find these dies in the layering circle die set. So those will just be one on top of the other. And then I'm going to add this with a little liquid adhesive as well in the center. And it's going to cover up that heart. So I want to make sure that I get that in the center. All right, so smooth that out there in the center so that your glue doesn't warp your cardstock. We're going to add our gold detailed heart to the center with dimensionals. And that gets popped up right there in the middle. So just make sure that you've got even spacing on the sides. Then we've got our greeting, and this says, "You're engaged. Here's to love and happiness." And that has also been stamped in Versamark on some black cardstock and then heat embossed with white embossing powder. And that goes off to the side. Just like that. And then we are going to add some of those gilded gems again. Let's put a big one down by the bottom, by the greeting, and then we'll do a small one and a medium one near the top. And that card is all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me create these beautiful cards celebrating all those loving moments in yours or someone else's life. If you're interested in getting written instructions or seeing close-up images of these cards, you can visit my blog, creativechelsea.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.